So, I just saw Avatar: The Way of Water today. Only a few months late instead of 13 years late for this one. And here's my off the cuff thoughts about it. This movie is not very good. It's not terrible, but just about everything I liked about the first movie is just done worse here. 6 out of 10, pretty disappointed in it. Let's talk about some specifics. I'll get to a spoilers section later. Right now this is pretty general stuff. And we'll start with the visuals. Now, this is one area that definitely improved. The first movie already looked good 13 years ago, and now The Way of Water looks fantastic. Especially the titular water. The water in this movie is good. There are scenes that look real even though they're not. Most of the characters are Na'vi, but, you've got some real humans in shots occasionally, and they're well composited. There is nothing visually about the movie that I would say looks bad. Now, however, there's nothing about the movie that I would say is particularly amazing either. One of the things I praised very heavily about the first movie is how the visuals between scenes talked to each other, and there was lots of very clear thematic ideas communicated through the visuals. Here, I'm sure there's some, but really the visuals were just... But really I would describe the framing of the movie as the camera is pointing at the action that's happening. There's not a lot of particularly amazing imagery going on here. And lastly, on the visual side, there's one gigantic negative of this movie, and that is the variable frame rate. Let me just go ahead and say that visually and plot-wise and theme-wise, this movie has a lot of good ideas, but that's not the same as a good exploration of those ideas. And variable frame rate is potentially a good idea. There's some scenes, like dream sequences that have a different frame rate, and, it's supposed to look a little bit different. It helps really emphasize how different the scene is. But that's not the use of a change of frame rate you're going to notice watching this movie. There is an action scene near the start that cuts from an overhead shot at 24 frames per second to a close-up shot at a much higher frame rate, and it looks awful. It is extremely jarring and extremely noticeable, and looked sort of like it was cutting straight from a pre-rendered cutscene to the gameplay of a video game. If it was consistently smooth the whole time, it could look okay, I guess, but seriously, the higher frame rate made the scene look faker. It was not a good idea to do. I really don't know why it was done, and I am not the first person to complain about it, because it's just bizarre. And one last thing I'll say before we get into spoiler territory is, this movie's too long. It's getting into the territory of good luck getting through this without having to get up and go to the bathroom long. There's one scene in The Way of Water that I'd already seen as a sort of a sneak preview when I saw the first movie in theaters a few months ago. I really should have just gotten up and gone to the bathroom in that scene. Alright, now let's get into spoiler territory. Though I'll start off with a positive here, too. So, Colonel Kortrick is back in this movie. And before the movie, I was like, how is he back? How is the same actor credited? He very clearly died in the first movie. Well, now he's an Avatar. Well, he's not really an Avatar. The title Avatar is pretty stupid at this point, because there's basically no characters that are avatars. Kortrick is just... Well, he's Na'vi now, because they had a Na'vi body and they put his consciousness into it. But that's not really something I'm complaining about. You can get away with a lot of stuff at the start of a movie. If you introduce something like that at the end of the movie, yeah, I'd have some questions, but I'm willing to accept pretty much anything you throw at me right then. But anyway, Kortrick being back is good because I really liked his character. And his character's pretty interesting here, too. Unfortunately, and this is the theme for a huge amount of stuff in this movie, I like what his character is building to, but it doesn't actually get there in this movie. There's a whole lot of interesting contrast at the start of Kortrick becoming a Na'vi versus when Jake became a Na'vi in the first movie. Pretty much the whole first 15 minutes is just scenes from the first movie, but done in a different way with a different context. But throughout the first half of the movie, it's very interesting to see Kortrick or the new Quartrix, like, relationship to his own past and relationship to be having a Na'vi body, and his relationship to Jake, who, when he finds out Jake captured a bird, but when he finds out Jake captured one of those birds by himself, he's like, well, I'm gonna do that myself too. Quartrix interesting as a character now who feels like the need to prove himself better than Jake. And, if he's gonna be around for the third movie, I hope that aspect of his character continues to be explored, because really that's the most interesting thing going on right now. But speaking of things that also weren't fully explored, how about Grace's daughter that Jake adopted being just a plant bender? Yeah, she's doing a lot of stuff with communing with nature that is far beyond the abilities of any of the other Na'vi that we've seen. And it's kind of just introduced and not explored. And yeah, that seems like another thing that we'll find out more about in the third or fourth or whatever movie. But really feels like I wanted more out of it here. So yeah, we've definitely gotten into negatives. I'll try to throw in one last positive here. This is definitely a very weird entry in the Fast and the Furious franchise, but it's probably not the worst. It is, after all, about family. I don't think the family theme is a bad place to start for the movie. I don't think it's particularly bad throughout. I just think the movie overall is a huge mess that can't really decide what it wants to focus on. So a lot of its ideas are kind of slapshot. They're just sort of scattered all over the place. And now, let's talk about the end of the movie, which I don't really have any specific story problems with, but is just way, way, way too long. Ugh. I still sort of have a headache from watching this film hours later as I'm recording this. 3+ hours of 3D with the screen filling my whole vision was an intense experience. That doesn't have anything to do with my rating of the film, but it was quite a lot, and by the end of the movie I was quite ready for it to be over. If you listened to my first Avatar review, I complained about the ending fight of that movie being just drawn on way too long after it really was already over. Well, with this movie I thought, actually, okay, this ending's pretty good. There's actually stakes throughout. It doesn't just keep going on and on and on. And then we get to the point where Jake and Quartrix are finally gonna have a fight with knives. Starts with a great line, a great exchange of dialogue. Quartrix's like, I'm gonna be coming after you as long as I'm alive, as if we haven't heard that line from him before. And Jake's like, well, better finish this now then. And if that had just been the final fight between the two of them, it would have been fine, but instead, there's another 15-minute sequence of action, and the boat's falling over, and the boat completely flips over, and they're trapped in the sinking boat, and they need to get out, and Grace's daughter, whatever her name is, communes with the fishes, and lots of bioluminescent fishes lighting a way out, and she has wings, which let her breathe underwater, which is a cool visual, and I think that animal is a really cool idea that was kind of underused. But this ending sequence is just so interminably long. And it's I didn't really feel like there was actual stakes to it either. It really should have felt like there was stakes, because one of Jake's sons already died in this battle. It should have been stakes. We should be like, oh no, they're gonna lose more, but it didn't feel like there was anyone actually in danger. It was just sort of a waste of time. Nobody dies in this battle, not even Quartrix. Though, if Quartrix had died, I would not have been surprised if he came right back again anyway, so may as well just keep him alive at this point. Okay, so that was a bit of a ramble. Like I said, this was my off-the-cuff remarks. This was not scripted, and this is just going to be a listenable video. So to repeat, 6 out of 10. I was pretty disappointed in this movie. It's not terrible, and you can still definitely enjoy it, but it just was not the things I was looking for in a sequel to a movie that I liked quite a lot. Thanks for watching, or rather listening. Bye.